Okay, what we're going to do now is show you how to adjust the brake on one of the 7 speeds. We're working on the back brake the front brake is going to work the same way. You're going to need a 5mm Allen wrench, and the first thing you're going to do is just stick it in here. Go ahead and cable's got a little stuck. I'm going to pull out the cable. Again, most things on bikes, you don't have to back that bolt all the way out, just enough to get the cable loose. You don't even really have to take it out of its little spot there. Typically, in this case, we're going to, because while we're at it, we're going to go ahead and change this rusty brake noodle here. So that's going to require us just to pop that guy all the way out of there. And we're going to have to cut off the cable end here. This is something we have a bunch of. We'll put a new one back on at the end so that the cable doesn't fray. But we'll clip that. And we'll just pull this old noodle off. Got a nice new one here. It's got the plastic insert in it. Sometimes those fall out, so just make sure they're in there. It's kind of crucial to make the whole thing work right. Then we're just gonna slide her on back in. Push her on through. She's good to go. We can put this little rubber boot back on. Rubber boots are an aesthetic thing. If the bike you're working on doesn't happen to have one, you don't have to worry about it too much. Alright, we're going to slide that noodle all the way up to the end of the cable. And we're going to leave it right there. What you're going to want to do now, throughout use of the bike, sometimes we're making quick adjustments and we'll just tighten up the cable using this barrel adjuster here. But when we go ahead and we remove the cable from the brake itself, we're going to reset the barrel adjuster. So you got to dial back the collar and dial in the barrel adjuster. This is essentially shortening the cable housing run and making it so you have a little more available cable length. I don't bring it all the way in. You're going to want some adjustment just to fart around with if you want to make it a little looser after we tighten the brakes up, after we adjust the brakes. But you're definitely going to want to have it pretty close to the end. Pretty close to all the way loose, I should say. Once you get that where you want it, tighten down that collar and that keeps it from moving. Then you can go ahead. Let's put the brake back in. Got to pull the boot out of the way, slip the cable in, push up the rubber cosmetic piece there, and slide your cable back into this little spot that is designed to catch and clamp down the cable on the brake arm. You can make that hand tight, and then slide her all the way up and pinch it. Now, you can go ahead, making sure that the cable, all the cable housings are seated where they're supposed to go up here at the end of the noodle. Make sure that guy's all the way in there so it doesn't slip through later. Pull that guy tight with your hand, and all you have to do then is tighten back down the nut. I am squeezing these 2 brake arms so that I push these brake pads up against the rim. You're not going to want it, obviously, like that, but I'll show you. I'm going to go ahead and leave it that way for now. And it may end up being a little too much. I'm not squeezing real hard, just enough pressure to hold it up against the rim, and I'll tighten that down so it doesn't slip. Why I do that is typically monkeying around with this, especially if you were to do a new brake cable, you're going to have some slack in the system. So now, even though it's tight, and I can't really, it's wanting to rub when I turn the wheel, but I'm going to grab this brake lever and I'm going to squeeze on it real hard, like 3 times. And that's going to pull the slack out, and it's going to loosen up the wheel. Still rubbing a little, but not nearly as bad. Give it a couple more squeezes to see if that takes care of the issue. Yeah, it's significantly better. A little bit of a rub still. So I'll go ahead and loosen some of that. One thing I will check though is that the brake is centered. Sometimes the brakes can become uncentered. This one is fairly well centered, but if it was cocked, say this way, I'd want to bring it back the other way, or vice versa. I would do that by tightening these screws. If I tighten this screw right here, that's going to bring the brake this way. If I tighten the screw, identical screw on the other side, it's going to bring the brake the other way. You may have to loosen up one side as you tighten the other, but other than that, it's pretty straightforward. You'll find the need for that if one brake pad is rubbing and not the other brake pad. Then you just center that rim between the brake pads by adjusting these 2 screws. Right now we're pretty good. It's pretty even. I'm just going to loosen a little bit of cable tension out of there. I'm going to do that. I'm going to grab the cable first so that it doesn't slip more than I want it to. I'm going to back that off. Then I'm going to let a little bit through. I'm going to tighten her back down again. Pretty easy. Now I can see that my brake pads are off. I'm going to go ahead and check that they're centered, and they're still pretty well centered. And now we're rolling pretty evenly. And you're good to go. You're going to come up here and squeeze, make sure you got good braking action, and you're done, except for putting the cable end piece back on.